Hello, everybody. Last time we ended at chapter 10, and today we are going to continue reviewing the rest of the study guide. So chapter 11 is about the self and self-striving. So just very simple, know the following concepts. I can move it bigger. Okay. So first you need to know what self-esteem is and know the problem of self-esteem. So in the slides there were and also the textbook talked about the problem of self-esteem. So they found that self-esteem is good. People feel good about themselves, but they found that self-esteem does not cause anything. So if people's self-esteem is improved, there's nothing else changed. So that's the problem of self-esteem. Self-esteem cannot motivate behavior. And self-concept, so you can know what self-concept is. Agency. So agency is actually a concept that combines self-concept with motivational properties. So here's a definition of agency as it can be a source of motivation. And next is goal self-concordance. So you can know what goal self-concordant is. And also this picture. This is very important. Okay, next thing is self-regulation. So self-regulation includes all these actions. If people do these actions, they're regulating themselves. And also self-control is a way to control their impulses and tendencies. That's self-control. And identity is how the self is related to the society. So I mean, for this chapter, just know these concepts and review the slides. I think you can remember a lot of the stuff you have learned in this chapter. Yeah, I think the slides are really important. And also, if you have time to read more textbook. And chapter 12 is about the nature of emotions. So chapter 12, we go to emotion, okay? So first, know what the definition of emotion is. So the emotion is that's the definition of emotion, but it does not really help to help you to understand the concept. But emotion has 4 concepts. Make sure that you know this table, you know this graph. It has 4 components in emotion. First one is subjective feeling. Second component is bodily responses. And third component is expressive behaviors. There are expressions of emotions. And the last one is a sense of purpose. So a sense of purpose gives us the motive to act because of emotions. So that's how emotion is connected to motivation. So just make sure that you remember all these 4 components of emotions. And also two systems of emotion. So it's here. So basically, in emotional studies, there are two perspectives. So each of the perspectives contribute to each of the two systems. So in the two systems view, they think that the two systems, biological systems and the cognitive systems, work together to form emotions. So here's a figure to show how this works. So you can see here's a stimulus and has two pathways, two systems. And one system is the cognitive system, and the other system is the biological system. And to make sure that you know where all the neural pathways are, and also you know where they come from, and also know the output, the consequence of the two systems. Okay. And next one is emotion families. So that's a concept that that's a concept that combine the two perspectives together. So with the concept of emotion family, the biological and the cognitive perspectives can have a common ground, because emotion families means that there are some basic emotions from a biological perspective, that's for sure. But some more complex emotions, more cognitively, more cognitive emotions are derived from each of the basic emotions. So the biological reaction of these emotions is the same because they share the same basic emotion, but they are actually different emotions because of different cognitive activities. So it's like a tree that has roots, has major branches, and has minor branches. So basic emotions are like major branches, and more complex emotions are like minor branches that grow from the major branches. So that's called emotion families. And next concept is functions of emotions. It's not really concept. It's just a concept, functions of emotions. Emotions have basically two functions. The first function is coping function. So help us to cope with fundamental life tasks. So you can see all these basic emotions has all these coping functions. And also has social functions. Emotions help us to have social relationships and have social interactions with other people. So we can use emotions to communicate feelings, to influence others, to help in a social interaction, and to create, maintain, and even dissolve relationships. So emotions has two functions. And the next part is emotion regulation. And make sure you know what emotion regulation is and know the 5 strategies. Situation selection, situation modification, attention focus, reappraisal, suppression. So you know what these 5 emotional regulation strategies are, and understand them. The next one is differences between emotions and the mood. So mood is a simple non-reflective feeling state. It's a feeling state, but does not have apparent sources. So emotions are different. Emotions are specific responses to specific life events. Moods are not, the sources of moods are not known oftentimes. So, and also people know what emotions they have, but people do not often know what moods they have. So moods are like a background of our mind. So emotions also influence behavior and direct specific courses of action. So the direction of the emotion is really clear, but moods, they influence our minds, influence how we think. And also moods last really long, like hours or days. Emotions last only for seconds or minutes, very short. So that's chapter 12, and next is chapter 13. So next is chapter 13 is also about motion. First concept, James Lange theory, and assumptions. There are some assumptions. They assume that if there is a biological pathway, there's an emotion. That's it. So the conclusion is that if there is an event, then the event triggers the bodily reaction, and the bodily reaction triggers the emotion, and that's it. That's it. So based on James Lange's theory, there's no appraisal part. There's no cognitive activity in the formation of emotion. But this theory is criticized a lot. So in the cognitive perspectives, we mainly talk about two traditions. First one is appraisal, and the second one is attribution. So make sure you know what appraisal is, and you know the appraisal theory of emotion. So make sure you know this graph very well. So there's a situation, there is a appraisal. What do you do in appraisal? So you evaluate the event as good or bad or positive or negative or beneficial or harmful. And then you have emotion. And then because of a particular emotion, you have action. So that's Arnold's appraisal theory of emotion. Next one is Lazarus complex appraisals. So actually you don't have to know all this. You don't have to know all this. But what you should know is these two concepts: primary appraisal and secondary appraisal. Make sure you know what the primary appraisal is and what secondary appraisal is. And also look at this graph, and you help you to understand two concepts better. So let's skip this part. And next one is about attribution. So make sure you know what attribution is. It's just the reason the person uses to explain important life outcomes. And there is an attributional theory of emotion. So make sure you don't mix the three theory. The first one is appraisal theory of emotion. The second one is attributional theory of emotion. And also they have primary and secondary appraisal, but these appraisals are about outcomes. So the primary appraisal of the outcome means that they evaluate whether the outcome is good or bad, or positive or negative. And the second appraisal of the outcome is try to explain why the outcome is good or bad. So make attribution of the outcome. So that's a secondary appraisal of the outcome. And make sure you can look at this graph, and you can they can help you to understand better the two concepts. And the last part is social sharing of emotions. Make sure you know the two types of sharing, social affective and cognitive sharing. So you make sure you know that what listeners do in the two types of sharing. So the two names are a little bit weird because they are actually about actions of listeners, not actions of the sharers. So in social affective sharing, the person just shares and the listener listen, understand, comfort, care, reassure the sharer. But in cognitive sharing, the listener reframes, real praises, and creates meaning of the event. So there are different ways that the listener treats the sharer. Make sure you know all this. But we have talked a lot about the cultural differences in emotions like this, but we will not cover this part in the final exam. So the last concept is a social sharing of emotions. Okay, let's go to chapter 14. Chapter 14 is kind of simple. You just know all this. You just know all these emotions. That's it. And there are a bunch of emotions, and you know what they are. You know the sources of these emotions. You know means that you know why people have emotions. You know why people have this kind of emotions. In what situation they have this kind of emotions. For example, in what situation they have the emotion of fear. What causes fear? And also you know the consequences or coping functions of each emotion. So for example, for fear, what's the purpose of fear? Help us to avoid some threats. So we feel that there are some threats in the environment, so we have the emotion of fear. With the emotion of fear, we can avoid the threats or keep away from the threats. Otherwise, how do we know that there are threats in the environment? So help us to survive. Of course, each of these emotions have particular coping functions and purposes. Make sure you know the causes of emotion and the coping functions of each emotion, and also you know what they are. Okay, last chapter is chapter 15. Actually, chapter 14 has like two parts. One is the humanistic psychology, and the second part is positive psychology. But we didn't really talk about positive psychology. So you can see all these concepts are about humanistic psychology. So first of all, you know what self-actualization is. Very important concept. Yeah, on this slide. And second, you know hierarchy of human needs. You know that why these needs are on a hierarchy, and what needs are on each level. And you know that some are growth needs and some are deficiency needs. And next, you know what actualizing tendency is. is from framework of Carl Rogers. It's a tendency to actualize the self, to enhance the self. And also you know what organismic valuing process is. And the next one is conditions of worth. You know what it is, you know how children get conditions of worth. And you know what unconditional positive regard is. And you know what conditional positive regard is. And next, you know what congruent is. Congruent is the consistency between expressions and feelings. And you can look at this graph to help you understand all these concepts. So they are organized into this single graph. And next, you know what fully functioning individual is. It's a result of self-actualizing. And there are some characteristics of fully functioning individual. Okay, so the last concept is this. So if you review, just review from first slide to this slide. That's enough. Okay, so that's it. And we have reviewed chapter 9 and chapter 10 in another video. And in this video, we have reviewed the chapter from chapter 11 to chapter 15. Okay, so thank you guys watching this video. And I really hope you can review each of the concepts. Make sure that you understand each concept, and sometimes you can apply them into real life. And also make sure that you review each concept, have enough time to review them all. And I hope you will have a good exam.